on you too.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the June 18th edition of the Washington County Committee for Community Involvement. My name is Bruce Bartlett. I am the chair of this jolly organization. Mary Manso is the vice chair, and Virginia makes sure that we do everything right. We got Ken and Paul and Jill and Linda and Jim and Stan. The whole gang's here. We are fortunate tonight to have the chair of the Washington County Board of Commissioners come to talk to us about things that she will tell us about. So, Catherine, Chair Harrington, I welcome your comments. So, take it away.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure and honor for me to be here. Oh, thank you, Ika, for sharing that. My appearance tonight came out of, I believe, a conversation from a prior CCI meeting, or perhaps a conversation with your chair, Bruce Bartlett, with regard to what are the big things on the county's plate that you all might want to be aware of. So what you see before you tonight is a document that I put together for my colleagues, which we discussed at our recent June 10th roundtable. So, and I just went over it with the various mayors of Washington County in my monthly meeting with them yesterday. So you are on the forefront of what is happening at Washington County with regard to the Board of Commissioners doing the policy and investment work on behalf of you, our community. So I know your time is very valuable, so I'm going to just run through this. Please note your questions along the way, and I'll try to get through this as quick as I can while also making sure that I'm being reasonable in my explanation. And then we'll go over all the questions you may have. So right at the top of this, it's just a simple word table. The very first row is set up to represent the 4 different quarters that make up a calendar year. And in order to help us all visually, I simply used a color for every other year. And you may wonder, what the heck? This goes out to the end of calendar year 29. Well, there's a reason. Well, actually, I think it goes out to calendar year 30. And the reason for that is because one of the big projects I'll enumerate later is with regard to planning and constructing an expanded jail. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. The next row is looking at time for a fiscal year basis. So we are right now in the 4th column. Oh, excuse me. No, we're in the 3rd. Well, we're about to enter the 3rd column. We're ending calendar 24, 2nd quarter, right? We're nearing the end of June. And we're about to start a new fiscal year. So ending fiscal year 24 and then entering fiscal year 24-25, or shorthand, just fiscal year 25. And you can see I also alternated the color scheme there to help our eyes. If it's possible to hit the caret over on the right to get rid of the pane on the very right, that might give us the full year, about halfway down the page. There you go, right there. Terrific. Okay, so I believe most of you have heard about the level of foundation building that we've been doing as the Board of Commissioners. We, for example, have invested in a new enterprise resource planning system, which is the basis of all of our HR systems, our finance and procurement systems that help us as an organization. That's behind the scenes stuff. But nonetheless, it's a $19 million investment. And the reason why it's been important for us to do that is because these systems are the foundation of our county work. The vendor products we've been using for the last 20 years are based on an Oracle platform, and Oracle does not support the platform any longer. Like it or not, my predecessors just put off dealing with that. And so here we are as your current board, and we had to deal with it. The next major thing not listed here that we have invested in is developing and adopting a 5-year capital improvement plan. Once again, this is a standard municipal practice, and Washington County just had never done one before. We had lists, prior budgets include lists, and lists had been prioritized, but it didn't include a financial strategy at all. We've done that work, and so now we're also building on that. The strategic plan update that you gave us feedback on, that's another foundational piece. We now have an adopted strategic plan that is applicable for the conditions here in the 21st century. So we have a strategic plan that we're hoping will serve us well for the next 4 years. Okay, so now we're building on that. So first row you see here is a facilities condition index. We have a great facilities manager, Laurel Brown, and she joined the agency in the middle part of 2022. And she has worked with her team, and we now have the preliminary results for development of a facility condition index. So she's gone through, she and the team have reviewed every single one of the buildings we own, and not just buildings, there are other major capital pieces, and have used industry practices and experts to help us assess those. Well, so they need to finalize that information, and we need to use that information and implement it as part of our CIP for our work for next fiscal year. The bottom line, and you can find it in our work session from May 7th, it's jaw-dropping. We have to figure out a plan for upgrading the 9 facilities that are in poor condition. So just like we've had to replace the 3 elevators in the public services building because they were breaking down and they were totally unreliable. People were getting stuck all the time. We have to get to taking care of these because we can't afford for people to not be able to get to the various departments that have customer counters. And we need to obey the law with regard to ADA access. So that's another new building piece. Another one, community service level assessment. You've heard me talk about how the state has required us. We're a creation of the state. County governments are a creation of the state, and the state expects us to deliver a certain suite of services for the community. Some of those services they provide some funding for. Very few do they surprise full funding for. And then other ones they enable us if we want to do that work. And we need to do a full assessment of all those services because we know we don't have the funds to do everything, and we're going to have to continue to engage with our legislature to say, hey, if you want us to do this work, you're going to have to help us here, or we're going to have to cut some of these services. So that's a big chunk of work. None of us knows how it's going to end up. We've hired a consultant to meet with all of our departments, so that information will be coming to the board. It's first time ever information, so I'm sure it won't have everything I wish it had. It'll be iterative, but later this year, we're going to go through that process. And we, the board, fully expect that we're going to have to use this first form and subsequent forms each of the next few budget years because we know that we don't have enough funding to do everything. This next line item is one where I imagine your ears will be piqued, and that is with regard to an updated resolution and order with regard to the CCI and CPO programs. As you know, the major R&O that relates to your work is from 1986. You heard that right, 1986. And you, like me, bump into limitations of that R&O, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because it's reflective of old language. It also has way more in it than what the CCI and CPO program does. So just like we went through an iterative process for proposing prior resolutions and orders in other parts of our service suite, what we would like to do is have our staff put together an early draft. They'll review that for the board. Then we will bring that here for you and for the wider public community to take a look at and give us advice on. So that will be coming. And so that you see enumerated here over the course of 4 different quarters. And as we know more about what the target months are, where we're aiming for these milestones, I'll certainly either myself or our staff will be back to share that with you. Another big project is the Washington County Library Cooperative Governance and Service Level Program. In fact, we had a work session on this 2 Tuesdays ago. This is a project that the executive team, library directors, and city managers have been working on. They're trying, we have agreement, we're trying to make sure that across the county, no matter what library you visit, you'll have at least a standard set of services that you can rely upon. We're really fortunate to have a Washington County-wide cooperative, so you can access the catalog for all over the county. But we want to make sure that if you're going in for internet access or whatnot, that you have a standard level of service. So we've got that work going on. And we already know that the levy will be expiring starting in June of the end of June 2026. So that's the end of the fiscal year that's out here. So we want to make sure that we've done all of the work that we need to do to go to the voters on the November 2025 ballot. And just today at our work session, we had a first ever planning session on the levies, and there's work to do So it looks like the November timeframe fits. And we commissioners tend to be involved with the fundraising for campaigns, not staff at all, but it does mean that we have some extracurricular activity. So this yellow line is really what caused me to sit down last September and start thinking not just about the next year or two, but really long term. And you might wonder why. Well, as I've talked about, we have a small jail. We're the second most populous county in Oregon, and we have the second smallest jail. The fact of the matter is, part of my reality is the prior board had done planning back in 2007 to estimate how our population would grow and how the incidence of crime may need to be handled. And like it or not, they never went back and looked at the plan, not even after 10 years. So we've been doing weekly, every single week in a calendar year, weekly forced releases of people out of the jail, not because we want to, because we don't have the space for them, every week since 2015. They actually started in 2012, but they weren't weekly until that calendar year. The legislature also made changes to the bail program, and also we have a public defender shortage. So courts have required us to release folks who may be booked in the jail within, now it was 10 days, now it's within 7 days if they don't have a public defender. In addition, we're having more and more people coming into the jail being booked with mental health difficulties that really should be in the state hospital, but there are shortages there. Anyway, it goes on and on. None of this I'm proud of, not at all. I want us to have a safe community. So what am I doing about it? Well, you can see here, we have a Center for Addiction Triage and Treatment opening up. We've also been putting state funds to very good use to increase mental health services across our county. But I still have this problem on the jail. So for this current budget year that's about to end, so this year, this time of year, last year, we approved funding to work on a jail planning study. That's now underway. A consultant who has great expertise is now on board, and we're going through a planning program. So you can see that listed here, another row down, the one that has in progress IP planning for a couple of years for phases 1 and 2. And then there will be a 3rd year plan. And we had a work session on this, a while back. I didn't note that. And then we're going to have to work out the finances. So worst case, I assume we're going to have to go to the voters for a capital bond, and that'll be in this calendar timeframe. And then it takes 3 years to build a new building. And so that means that out here in calendar 30, who wants to think out to 2030? Holy smokes, that's when we would have a new jail. And building a new jail, there's more to it than that. We have to have the staff to support that jail. So they have to go through training for 2 years. They have to be hired. So we have to know, how does that align with the funding? Not only the Washington County budget, but the public safety levy provides funding for jail deputies. So that's what all that is. I made this pitch to my colleagues at, like I said, the June roundtable. So I outlined what happens if we don't seize this aggressive path. If we go with an alternative, that means the pain goes out further. They didn't prefer that, so we're going with our aggressive plan. So beyond that, we do have some other operational funding needs we need to sort out for the other aspects of what I call our public safety and justice stack that your county provides across our county. Community corrections, we have a center as well as parole and probation officers, juvenile justice facility, that's Harkins House, as well as secured juvenile facilities and the appropriate operations for that. Our district attorney operations, as well as the law library and conciliation. I personally have also been investing my time and energy. We have the local match to start the planning for a new courthouse because ours is almost 100 years old, and we're not going to get the needed judges we need until we have more courtrooms, and we're not going to have new courtrooms unless we build a new building. See how the lack of planning by prior boards has really stacked up the criticality of this anyway. So we made the pitch a couple of terms ago. We didn't get the funding. We're trying again in the upcoming long session. Phew, those are just the big things. We have a lot of other work that we do as well, but these are the biggest ones. So I just wanted to give you a flavor for what are the big things that we're spending time on so that it's not a mystery to you for what we're dealing with. So that's as fast as I was able to get through it. And so now I'd like to open the floor up, Bruce, in whatever fashion you want to use to help moderate the questions. And I'm all ears. And you're in control of the time as well.
Okay, well, we value this and we'll write it out to the end. Paul, what do you got?
Question I have, since jail space is limited and obviously you're not going to have a bunch of cells before you do some sort of expansion, is it possible to contract with jail space in other communities to fill in the gap?
Yes, thank you, Paul. Right now, we're having staffing challenges at the jail. You may know that we have a few pods that are closed because we don't have enough deputies to staff the jail. So we have already contracted for additional jail beds in Yamhill County, and we continue to look for short-term measures, as you suggest, with other counties. The bottom line is we have to have the budget in order to pay for that as well. So we're not in free and clear for that, but we're working on it.
Great. Mary, what do you got?
Good evening, Commissioner Harrington. Actually, it's Chair Harrington, but I've got questions about the modernization of the CPO-CCI program. As you stated, staff is going to prepare an early draft to present to the board. And I have concerns about that, partly because we went through the process of updating the service level agreement for CCI, and staff needed a lot of help from the CPO and the CCI leaders to get the facts right.
Let me assure you that your investment of time in those efforts is not lost. We have that information, and so our staff will be combing through that information as part of bringing us a first draft. I don't want to get ahead of myself or my colleagues here, but we may very well have an iterative process on these drafts, which is why I've scoped this out as 1 year right now. Just so perhaps we might just, the team might take all of that good input information that you've provided us. It's a gift. And then we'll look at what sort of construct may make sense for a modernized RNO just on the CCI and CPO programs and leaving the rest of the RNO aside, and come in with, here are all the elements that we're considering. Here's feedback in a general nature of what we have, and here's what we propose for next steps to flush all that out, come back with a fuller proposal and go from there. So we're not even at that high level sketch phase, Mary, but I did want you all to know that we are committed to modernizing that.
So I guess as a follow-on question, OARCE is going to take input when they put together the draft. And is there going to be a formal process for submitting that input? Because we are the ones that know the program. We are the ones that are in the trenches and we understand it. And I think a lot of our frustration in dealing with staff is staff doesn't really understand what we do. And I think it's almost like somebody's designing the airplane without knowing what needs to be put into the airplane. And I think we are really used to working cooperatively, and we, as volunteers, really want to be part of the process. We don't want to be reviewing drafts. We want to be in the trenches, helping construct that draft to begin with.
I hear you. And so does Danny Ledesma.
Great, thank you.
I will say that when we worked on the service level agreement for the CCI, the consultant started the process and then the CCI took it and ran with it. And so I would fully expect that we will have quite a robust set of iterations as we throw ideas out and consider them. Virginia, what do you got? Oh, holy cow. Oh, yeah. I think you're muted.
I was muted. I said, thank you for joining us, Chair Harrington. That's all I said so far, so you didn't miss much. As the publisher of Cedar Mill News and kind of self-appointed, as they say, mayor of Cedar Mill, I field a lot of comments and questions about criminals not being punished or caught or kept away because of crime around here. What's the best way for me to describe the situation to my readers and all the people who post on social media and cynically say, oh, well, they'll be out tomorrow? What's the best way that we can describe that? And what can we tell them is being done, aside from all these long-range studies?
Well, I don't know the answer to your question, nor am I going to give you a flippant answer. So I think we'll just note it and have to come back to that. Thank you.
I wonder if there's someone that would be a good source that we could bring to, for example, to CPO1 to talk about these. We get the sheriffs all the time, but
I don't want to leave you with the impression that we can just overnight fix the situation that has been decades in the making. I can't make up for that lost time. The fastest my imagination has been able to work out when we will have a better situation with regard to the jail takes us out to the year 2030, which is, believe me, incredibly uncomfortable. But at the same time, I have to be realistic. We can't just build a building like that. We have to plan a building. We can't just go from plan to construction. We have to have the resources to build it. So we've got work ahead of us, but I'm really proud of my colleagues for joining me in ownership of this need and moving the ball forward.
So maybe the district attorney could send us somebody to talk to us about that?
There aren't any better answers they're going to be able to give you.
Okay. All right.
I
Well,
attended.
Just what happens to someone when they're arrested and convicted and.
So, Virginia, I attended the Portland City Club presentation on public safety that had the police union representative, the jail director, and their community correction probation and parole officer. And they were beside themselves with being overloaded with serious criminally oriented people with no room to absorb any like low-level drug offenders that would come out of the Measure 110 reversal. We have
Right.
in Oregon a tremendous issue with how we deal with people with criminogenic tendencies. That's
Okay.
all you can tell
Well,
people.
I wasn't asking for instant answers. I just wondered what we can tell people.
Well,
I'll just tell them what you told us, that we've got to work on the system and we're working on it, and hang tight.
and the treatment centers that were funded some couple years ago are now starting to come online. The CAT system in Washington County will be a huge benefit. So all we can do is stay
And in
tuned.
addition, the state legislature just passed new Measure 110 reform laws. One for deflection, or one aspect of it is deflection, the other is diversion. And our team is working very hard on the mechanics of deflection with the hope of having that in place by September 1st, so that instead of booking people into the jail, we can deflect them away from the criminal justice system and into treatment. If they refuse treatment, then they will be booked in the jail and go through the court system, and that's where there are opportunities to divert them out of the court systems and into treatment. But if they still deny that, then they'll go through all of the criminal proceedings. So we're not just sitting still, sitting on our hands or anything. We're doing everything we can as fast as we can, but we also have to do these things thoughtfully and lawfully. Who's next, Bruce?
Linda, what do you got?
Linda, are you there?
Be sure to unmute.
There we go. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much for being here and talking with us. I would like to first second what Mary has said. And I've heard a lot about that there's going to be this process for RNO and upgrading or bringing CCI and CPO into the 21st century, perhaps. But what I haven't heard, and I'd like to hear, is at what stage along this process are we going to be brought into the process, or will we just be asked at the end or told at the end?
No, you're not going to be asked at the end or told at the end or voluntold at the end. But I would very much like to get a liftoff on this idea and get it programmed in. So I've come to you very transparently and openly to let you know that this is a major project that we have agreed to put on our plate. It may take us up to a year. And the next step is for our staff to figure out an initial schedule for us to go about doing that and to bring it here. So I'm sorry, but I feel like I'm getting shot down for even having the courage to get this on our work plan. So stay tuned. We have heard loud and clear. We have made a commitment. We'd really like to get to it and come back to you with an initial idea for you to then respond to, an idea for how we might go about this. Not the first step being a draft, but just how do we see ourselves being able to work with you to accomplish such a task?
Well, I will say that as chair of this organization, I'm going to do my utmost to keep the creative potential of the organization as productively engaged as possible. And I'll just leave it there. Jim, what do you got?
I've got a number of things that are in the same topic, but they're really important. We need some input and clarification soon, Madam Chair. There's a number of things like at a CPO 8 meeting a month and a half ago, you said that cities, that the local should contact the county, not the cities. For months, for years, for decades, we've been working with cities. We need some clarification on that. Other things we need clarification on including candidates forums. We've been told two different things on candidates forums and debates. We need some clarification on a number of items here, but particularly the one with the cities, and working with the cities is a very, very important one. We're in Tigard, and the Tigard City Council gives us extra time to talk because we're CPOs. Other communities should be able to do that too. Anyway, I'll leave it there. You've answered. We'll wait and see what happens. If you can help us now clarify some things, that would be really helpful. Is there someone we should turn to?
I do want to share with the full audience that I believe Mr. Long mischaracterized what I contributed. What I told the CPO 8 was they needed to stop writing letters to the city of North Plains telling them what they should and shouldn't do with regard to their next steps for hiring a new city manager. That is up to the city council, and they have public processes to use. We don't want the CPO 8 county advisement program to be used to tell the city of North Plains how they should be going about doing their independent work. That was the clarity that I provided.
So I would like to just briefly reflect back that as the county public participation organization, that we are not, it's not our purview as a group to make another meeting, to do that as individuals.
Bruce, yes, you're correct. Unfortunately, your audio and video is breaking up a little bit, or at least it was for me. Did he come across clearly for all of you?
No, he broke up.
Okay, let me just try to reiterate that.
Turn off your video, we'll get your audio.
Oops, we lost you, Bruce.
He's frozen.
Holy cow.
There,
okay, I give up. I give up. Okay, Fran, what do you got?
But you are correct, Bruce. If I could paraphrase what I think you said, you were communicating that as individuals, you can go and contribute your thoughts to city councils as much as you would like. What we're saying is that as a organized group under the moniker of the Washington County CPO number system, that we're reminding you and asking you that your purpose is to be advisement to the Washington County organization, and more specifically, the Board of Commissioners. So please be respectful of that.
Thank you. Fran, what do you got?
First, I'd like to thank you very much for being here tonight, and I want to commend the commissioners on the work they've done about housing our homeless population, our houseless population, and the treatment centers are really important aspects. So thank you very much for doing that incredible job. What I wanted to mention is, as a member of the state DCL, the Citizen Involvement Advisory Committee, we're working on two things. One is a community engagement toolkit, as well as the probably goal 1 will be another one we're gonna be addressing. And I really, again, have asked that I please be part of this engagement regarding the CPO CCI program, because there's a good link between what the state is doing versus what Washington County is trying to do, and we want to avoid gaps and overlaps. And so just let me be the liaison. And there's one other aspect. I'm afraid that we're not seeing the forest for the trees regarding transportation and significant natural resources in Southwest Washington County. And Garrett Rosenthal from the Metro and a number of other city planners have gotten together with them, and I have a really good comprehensive package, which Danielle, I think I wanted to ask if Danielle's the right person to talk to about it, but we really need to have some strategic direction, or we're going to end up plowing through our farmland and our most important resources while we're worried about a single tree in someone's backyard. So it's the pragmatic environmentalist in me that really wants us to look ahead and work on that. So I would please ask that we do that. Danielle, I'll send you a copy of my comprehensive package, which is Metro, State, Washington County, and the cities, all their plans, and you can see where the connects and disconnects are. Okay, thank you very much.
Well, so Danny Ledesma is the right person for the CCI, CPO, R&O work. With regard to your raising the larger county-wide system of transportation as it relates to urban reserves that will be under the purview of the counties, there are conditions for each of the urban reserves that already spell out Washington County working with the requisite cities. Metro has also placed different conditions on UGB expansion. So we already have a system for working on that, and our staff is following up on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add the question I've been asking to the board and to Danielle too, is what is our county going to look like, or what is the goal 50 years from now or 40 years from now? Are we going to be a hybrid county? Or are we going to be an urban county? If people get their mind, it's you set expectations, and then you can manage expectations. So if we set the expectations for the county residents and business owners, are we going to ultimately be urban, or we ultimately want to preserve the agricultural environment, etc.? Once we've set those expectations, and that's what I want to help be a part of, so that we can have clarity for people moving forward. You will avoid a lot of litigation.
Well, we already know the answer to that, Fran. And the answer is we're going to have an urban area that is part of the Metro urban growth boundary, as well as our 3 standalone cities, North Plains, Banks, and Gaston. And we're going to continue to follow the state law in protecting the rural reserve lands, and then those rural lands beyond that. That is the vision that the state has agreed to, and that we are bound to follow through on.
Thank you. Mary, what do you got?
Maybe I can figure out how to unmute. Chair Harrington, thank you for being transparent about the process for modernization of the CPO CCI program. I apologize if it seemed like you were being attacked, but I think you have to understand that we went through a multi-year process of the re-envisioning, and we feel like we've been a bit burned. So just wanted to get that out there. But thank you for restarting and letting us know that this process is going to be different from the re-envisioning process. Thank you.
Yeah, I do respect the level of work that you all put in when the CPO program went from OSU back in-house, as well as what has transpired since then. That's why I've tried to reassure you that that information is available. Danny knows it. Danny's been going through all of that. And so we are trying to be very respectful of that. What I worked with our staff team on is just this need that you're all trying to do good work, right?
No, not trying. We are doing good work.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm
There is no
sorry.
try.
I misspoke. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. You are doing good work, but you keep running into these odd points, and I don't want you to have that pain moving forward. So that's why we thought we would invest in this effort to provide that clarity, cooperatively, collaboratively with you, not to you, not without you, but with you. So I'm merely trying to share with you today that we've made a commitment that we will work on this and work on it together. And Danny will be coming back to share thoughts with you about how we go about that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's pretty clear. Ayla, what would you like to say?
Oh, thank you very much. And Chair Harrington, thank you for being with us. It's lovely to get to have a little piece of your schedule. That's an impressive plan for the next 30 years or whatever. I think, first of all, I just want to say that I'm thrilled that we have such a group of wise people here in our CCI. I mean, if you combined all our years together, you know, you've got 500 years of people being involved with this county and how it grows and how it represents, you know, what's going on here. And I was in a CPO back in 1980s, and I'm happy to see banks get resurrected and CPO 8 and 13. It's just great. It's a bit hard being in the rural areas that you spoke of, because there is so much attention to inside the UGB and unincorporated areas of the county. We in the rural areas really don't get much support in some ways. And one of the issues would be that this hard is the cartography availability for us in rural areas is very poor. We don't have maps that are clear about where our roads are. And I hope that some of the things that rural people need more help with can have an opportunity to have a voice. I do agree that we should be able to talk to cities as we do the county. If we are the arm and a representative of the county, we should be able to interact with the city council as a body and as an individual. I don't see the conflict there, and we're not trying to tell anybody what to do, but we certainly should be honored by city council to be heard as a group. And also, I am getting a real sense of a lack of what we used to have when we were part of the extension service. You know, we came out of a place of being farmers and loggers and folks in the dark about land use and transportation. We were just told what's happening, and CPOs formed to have a head start and a voice. And we were given notice of any land use application that crossed the counter the day it was turned in, not when it's a finished product. And I hope that when we work on these RNOs or whatever, we start looking about how CPOs are given notice, and that we are actively involved in the beginning, not the end. So yeah, that's what I have to say about life in the country.
Thank you. I would like to see more rural issues come across. And speaking of the Extension Service, they offer quite a few rural issue formats. Um, uh, can somebody here speak to the what development applications in the rural part of the county require public notification?
Well, I can tell you what it used to be.
Well, no, I want to know what it is now.
I think that's a really good question, Bruce. I would like to have us capture that and come back and answer that.
Okay.
And
Melissa may have something to say.
I do need to ask for the group's grace because I know that you have another topic on your meeting tonight. And I did not plan to be here until 8 o'clock.
Okay.
So
We got one more question. Gretchen, do you have a short, concise question? If you don't, we'll capture it and let the chair go on.
You're muted.
You're muted.
That's short and concise.
I'd like to raise a question for the chair, and hopefully she will be able to get back to me. And that has to do with our long term transportation. We have some arterials down here in South County that are in terrible shape, that are still farm roads, like you folks out in CPO 8 have, only they are inside the urban growth boundary and are handling obscene numbers of cars with lots of streets coming to them that don't match. It's very dangerous. And I would like you to take a look at seeing how we can get specifically Beef Bend Road on the MSTIP as soon as possible. It is a mess.
Okay, so I'm going to capture that, Catherine. I know that you.
I'm sending it off. I'm done.
Thank you. And I find it frustrating also, but I think that we got that. Catherine, I want to thank you so much for coming and spending 3 times more time than you had anticipated spending. We are certainly an engaged group, and we appreciate you visiting regardless of whatever your message is. But these were good messages, and thank you.
I wasn't intending for my message to be other than informative in terms of what we're striving to do. So thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and energy and your specific questions with me and Danny tonight. I very much appreciate it.
We'll follow up. Thank you very much.
You bet. But good night.
Okay, Melissa, you get to be in the hot seat now.
Well, thank you, Bruce. That sounds so incredibly welcoming.
Yes, welcome to the hot seat. We're all warmed up and
that's okay. You know, it's been kind of chilly, and so yeah, this is good. Okay, well, I have a PowerPoint. How do you want me to share my screen? There I go. I will share my screen.
Share your screen.
I will share my screen. All right. And I have the A team here tonight. I've got Terry Hano and Ellen Elvers joining me. Anne is a senior planner, Terry is an assistant planner, and they know everything. So they've been promoted, so they're here. So this is good. All right. So happy Tuesday. I am here to pick your brains about what you'd like to see added or removed from the neighborhood meeting requirements as explained in the neighborhood meeting packet. That being said, I do feel the need to say that, you know, I'm here to take suggestions, not to make promises, but what we want to get a sense of is what's out there, what people are interested in, what you'd like to see. There are legal requirements, there are equity requirements, there are all kinds of things that, you know, may or may not make things possible. So you need to understand that going forward. But we'd really like to know what your thoughts are from the CPO perspective. I've been really interested in updating the neighborhood meeting packet just from a personal standpoint for quite a while. It's been several years since it's been updated, but it's just been kind of one of those things that's been simmering on the back burner for everybody, and we're excited to get it more user-friendly for everyone. But again, please understand this is just an update about the neighborhood meeting itself, not the entire development process, because that's way outside my scope for sure. So purpose of the neighborhood meeting, updating the neighborhood meeting packet. First of all, the last update I was in 2019. I'm going to check with Terry and Ann on that. That's what is written. That's what the date is on the packet that we have posted online. Is that, there hasn't been one since then, has there?
Not that I know of, Melissa.
Okay, that was my sense, but I didn't want to misspeak. Now, we did do the supplemental guidelines on in 2021, but those were just kind of, that's only for the virtual meeting. And so now we've kind of had the requirements almost in like 2 different places, at least on our website. So one of the goals would be to put everything into one document. And I know Terry's been a proponent of that for a while as well. But the goal for the neighborhood meeting packet, it has always been to meet community and developer needs. And we want it to be equitable and inclusive so that everybody who participates, whether it's, the CPOs or property owners or neighbors or developers, all feels that they've been heard and understood. And plain language is the component of that. I won't get on my plain language soapbox, but that's kind of a thing for me. Really technical language makes people uncomfortable right out of the box. And so if we can sort of simplify and make everything a little more conversational, I think that will make people more comfortable when they receive one of these neighborhood meeting packets in the mail about a development in their neighborhood. And, and again, like I said, we want to get all the guidelines and information into one document. And then like I said, we really want feedback from you. We're also going to be reaching out to the development community to see what they have to say. So I know most of you know all the things about the neighborhood meeting requirements better than I do, and Terry and Ann certainly do. But I'd like to run through the different phases of the process just so we can get a better focus on what areas you have the most concerns with. And I really like to start out, anytime I talk about the neighborhood meeting process, I like to start off with where it fits in the process, because particularly like I get a lot of constituent communications regarding neighborhood meeting. People get a neighborhood meeting notice in the mail, and then they send an email to the commissioners and say, hey, we want to see this application, and why are you letting this happen in our neighborhood? No matter how many times we say it, they don't seem to understand that the neighborhood meeting is one of the very first steps in the whole development process. And if there's no pre-application conference and they're not required, there's a good chance that we don't have any information at all to share about the project because we haven't seen the application yet. And there's a reason for that, right? I mean, the point of having the neighborhood meeting where it is so that the goal is so that we can inform the citizen can inform the developer early enough in the process so that when the development application is submitted, it's been responsive to those neighborhood concerns. How am I doing, Terry? Am I okay so far? Oh dear.
All is well so far.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Carrying on. Terry and Ann, they're keeping their eyes on me. That's good. So one of the first things that a neighborhood meeting has to deal with is the scheduling part of it. And this is true whether or not it's online virtual or whether it's in person, as you probably know. I'm going to call attention to the no legal holidays portion of this. And I honestly don't remember, Mary, which holiday it was, but I do remember you calling us when somebody scheduled a neighborhood meeting on either the night of, I want to say Labor Day or Memorial Day. It was a Monday night anyway, and you caught it, and that was good. So I publicly thank you, Mary, for watching on that. So that's good.
Another role that the CPO leaders play.
Exactly. And we appreciate you for that role. again, you probably all know about all this, you know, relevant CPO boundaries, same, not as recommended that it not be on the same night as the relevant CPO meeting, unless it's part of the CPO meeting, and then the meeting must occur within 180 days of submittal of the development application. So what's in the envelope? When the neighborhood meeting notice goes out, letter to the neighborhood, GIS map, welcome to the neighborhood letter, summary of Washington County's type 2 and type 3 procedures. Virtual meetings must also include a written explanation of the proposal. I have a question on that I bet Terry and Ann could answer. Written explanation of the proposal, but isn't that already included in the regular packet? So why is it an additional one that they need for the virtual?
I don't quite understand the question.
Okay, the virtual neighborhood meetings, the directions say they must include everything that's in the in-person neighborhood meeting packet, but this one also has to include a written explanation of the proposal. But doesn't the in-person already include that?
I'm not quite sure who wrote that. Maybe they were just giving a friendly reminder that that's important information to make sure that it's there. Okay, that works for me because that's all I was coming up with either, but I thought maybe it was something more complicated that I didn't understand. So anyway, so there you go. The URL, obviously, toll-free number for participating by phone, addresses to send comments and questions, and then a Dropbox site so that, because if you're in person, you can pick up hard copy of materials. The Dropbox site is so you can get them virtually. Okay, meeting notification, and this is pretty much the same for both in person and online. Written meeting notice, including the CPO where the property is located. The question that came up earlier about the notification for development within a rural area, was that you, Bruce? I think so. It's 500 feet in the urban area, 1,000 feet in the rural area. And we do get requests to have that extended. As of 2002, our numbers were double what the state's requirements are. I don't think we could make it any wider than that if we're already double the state. But I'm not sure that that's still where the state is, and I'm planning to check on that. Conducting the meeting. Same thing. Applicants review the proposed application, the size, the scope, the landscaping schedule. And then there's a CPO representative that's allowed to comment on the purpose of the neighborhood meeting. My understanding is that at this time, the CPO representative is not supposed to either endorse or oppose the development or the application rather. However, I don't see that specified in the instructions, so I'm not 100% sure on that. And then applicants must take notes and prepare the notes to provide a record of the meeting, the time and date, the name and address, all comments received or issues raised, including anything submitted by phone or email. Virtual is pretty much the same thing. Address all questions and comments submitted by email or US mail, notify all participants that the meeting is being recorded, collect names and contact information, and then submit to development review, current planning, any email or US mail received regarding the meeting before submitting the application. Anne, how am I doing? I wasn't aware of that last one. I thought that all of their communication came in as a packet with their land development application.
That was my understanding too. However, that's what's in the supplement. So there you go. Yet another reason to update the process here. Yeah. After the meeting, 14 days, mail copies to the meeting notes to the CPO chair and the CPO representative who attended the meeting. Land use application has to include all of these things, and CPOs can send comments on the meeting notes to the applicant within 14 days of receiving the meeting notes.
Okay, so. Oh, I'm sorry, my mouse is going crazy. All right. Applicants, no, where am I going? Okay, now it's time. Tell me, us, what you guys want. And I have in the, also participating is Chris Lewinberg, who is serving as our scribe as we don't have a chat. So, Paul, we'll start with you because your hand went up first. Bruce, we're looking at your stomach. There you go.
Paul?
Paul, go
There
ahead.
he is. He unmuted. He's good.
Yeah, things weren't working here. Anyway, having to do with the response about, okay, if nothing's in the packet to start with and you don't know anything else, and I know that LUT at some point is going to ask a whole bunch of questions, and I'm trying to think, is this something that we as CPO members should anticipate what those questions are so that we actually ask them if we're at one of these meetings with a developer?
I was having a little bit of trouble hearing you, Paul, so I might need you to repeat that. But if I understood you correctly, you're saying that you heard that we were going to have questions that you should ask developers at these meetings?
No, that's not what I was saying.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Saying that before you get an application, but we as members of CPOs are present in order to see a presentation or ask questions. I'm thinking there are obvious questions that land use will have to ask at some point or another. And for us, if we're anticipating what those might be, we can ask them right up front so that we're aware. And that when the application gets to land use, well, it won't be something that's a mystery to anybody. The questions have already been asked.
I guess I'm not following what questions you're referring to. Anne, Terry, any thoughts on this?
Well, let me just jump in and say that if you can hear me,
Yep.
that there's a kind of normal expected set of questions that people always ask at neighborhood meetings. And if we could capture those and put them into a Q&A form, I think that's what Paul is saying, is that it would be helpful to get ahead of what people are going to ask anyway.
Okay, so you want us to develop a list of questions that a CPO or the developer would just automatically be required to answer and then present at the neighborhood meeting?
Yeah, I mean, having gone to quite a number of neighborhood meetings, people always ask the same questions. And if we had something that anticipated those, we could answer them ahead of time, and then perhaps they would read them. That's the big issue, is getting people to engage before they bring their sharp knives out.
Okay.
Hey, Gretchen, what do you have?
I got a couple of quickies. Tigard and Beaverton, I was on the council some years ago, spent a lot of time trying to make sure that the stuff in their neighborhood meeting requirements was consistent between the cities. And the county has this issue with lots of cities. And it would be really good if you guys can double check with what's going on in Beaverton, what's going on in Tigard, especially with developments in the urban area, to make sure they're consistent. Because if you have, Jane Doe living on one side of the street that's in Beaverton and John Smith, who's across the street, who's in the county, it can be very confusing if you don't have consistent rules.
Okay, but that's not related to the neighborhood meeting packet though, right?
Well, yes, some of the things in the packets aren't consistent. That's what I'm making the comment about. Secondly, the maps that the developers put out, I'm a retired real estate and land use lawyer, and half the time I can't figure out where the property exactly what it is, where it is, how it's zoned. I think it would really be helpful if the requirement for the notice would have more specificity for the developer to come in. That's not directly in the notice, but it's part of that whole process. Those are two very distinct, specific things that I would suggest.
Okay, so back to the I can't say that word.
Specificity.
Thank you. With the developer. So you're asking that the developer needs to have more specific information provided.
For the map, yes. And
I think that in the terminology of a figure 1, figure 2, figure 1 is the area view and figure 2 is the specific property. And I've noticed that some of the figure 1s don't direct you to where it actually is in a very convenient manner.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Right.
Thank you, Virginia.
Well, as a person who enjoys going to neighborhood meetings and who wants to encourage our neighbors to go to them, receiving a printed URL, which consists of maybe 36 to 40 characters, is absolutely mind-bogglingly frustrating and useless. And those things should be delivered to us digitally so that we can copy them and share them, or else the developer should invest in a tiny URL or something like that so that it's something that can be transmitted. I can't tell you how many times my eyes have crossed trying to copy a URL that is baffling. But that's minor compared to the proliferation of platforms that are out there. I was just looking back through my notes. I have a whole folder inside my neighborhood meetings folder about online rule, as you know. And some of the platforms that the developers want us to use are extremely unfriendly. In particular, as you know, I use a Mac, and Teams doesn't like Macs. And some of the other platforms everybody uses Zoom. We're using Zoom tonight. The county uses Zoom. I would really, really like to see the county require the developers to use Zoom, because by the time you get through the thicket of even getting into the meeting, and then trying to figure out where the controls are and what's going on. I was writing about one meeting where I couldn't even get into the meeting until halfway through. And then I interrupted the whole meeting. They recognized me and called on me, but as the CPO rep, I was interrupting the middle of the meeting, and it was disruptive, and I didn't like it, and they didn't like it, and nobody liked it. So my number one desperate plea is to require Zoom as the platform. It's not like the developer can't figure out, can't use Zoom. And when they force us to use other platforms, it's prohibitive.
There is one issue about, and I'm not saying it can't happen, it could, but one thing to consider is that I know that there's been a lot of people who have mentioned that Zoom is free. The free version of Zoom lasts only 40 minutes.
Right. But
let me finish.
If you're going to spend $1 million developing
Virginia,
land,
can I please finish? Thank you.
Okay.
So that's true, and while I realize that the larger developers can probably certainly afford a business Zoom, we have to also cater to those people who own a property and want to divide it into 2 parcels. So I mean, I'm not saying it can't happen, Virginia, that's not what I'm saying, but we have to be cognizant of the expense that we are forcing upon our developers, because they are not all big firms. Some of them are husband and wife or husband and partner who are looking to subdivide. and the expense of a Zoom subscription for a neighborhood meeting might be prohibitive or at least uncomfortable.
what,
And that's a
120 a year?
possibility. It's an equity income issue.
Okay.
But it's something that we will be considering. Thank
Accepting
you.
that, the message I think that you'd get from most of the CCI is that Zoom is the vastly preferred tool.
Agreed.
So if you
Right.
could promote that.
And we
I mean,
will
they're
certainly make the
already going to
list.
be, they're going to be spending a bunch of money getting ready to develop their land. This seems like a very low bar for entry to
So let's keep
provide
going. We got
Zoom
8 people
platform.
here with
Anyway,
questions.
I've said my bit. You know how
Thank you.
I feel about that.
Thank you. Gretchen, what do you have?
Gretchen's already gone, hasn't she?
I think
Gretchen's already
so.
gone.
Oh, okay.
It's my turn. It's my turn.
It's
Okay,
Mary's
Mary.
turn.
My wish list. So I know there may be problems with verifying that it's actually happened, but I would really like email copies of the meeting notice because it's much easier to distribute that as a CPO leader. I'd also like the meeting notes in email. I would like the attendance sheet in email form because it's just a whole lot easier to communicate if I have that stuff electronically. The sign-in sheets are a real frustration for me because if it's an in-person, the way the information is nobody's going to spend time writing out their snail mail address as well as their email address. I just want an email address. And I don't know if there's a requirement that you actually have a physical address of where these people live, but it's a whole lot easier to get a hold of people via email than by telephone or snail mail. And it's been a while since I've read the neighborhood meeting letter, but is it clear in that if you're in a urban area that your next door neighbor may not be getting the notice because the notice is only going to people within 500 feet of the site? I think a lot of people get the letter and aren't aware that their next door neighbor may not be getting it. And I think something within the letter that communicates the need to reach out to your neighbors and share the information could have some real value.
I've seen
Virginia,
somewhere
it's my
they come
turn.
with
It's
a
my
map
turn.
that
Virginia,
shows the perimeter.
Virginia, it's my turn. Stop.
I was supporting you.
Okay. And then also I think there'd be value in directing people back to the CPO. They want to call the county to find out information. The CPO may actually have more early information than the county in some cases. And, if you can, and I think the form letter does not indicate which CPO you're a part of, but if that could be included along with the information that the CPO, your local CPO, will get a complete copy of the application if and when it's submitted. So that's my wish list.
Stan?
Hello.
I'm sorry, Stan, I'm not hearing you.
Oh, geez.
I can hear you. Just talk
Again?
Talk at your computer louder.
Can you hear now?
Yes.
That's
Okay.
better.
All right. And I'm one of the shortest serving people in this whole group. I've been here for 10 years. But most of the forms to me that comes in the envelope for someone that has never seen something like this, they're too simple. They're not clear for of how the individuals in the neighborhood are part of this participation. There's not enough information for them. There should be something like preliminary information that should go out to them so that they get a broader, more comprehensive where they are in this
I'm
stage.
sorry, Stan, could you repeat that last sentence again for me, please? I could not hear you.
That it's too simple. As far as the layout of these 4 pages that somebody gets of, it's a project that's happening in their nearby. They got some guy, some people, some company that is doing something in some property, and it's how do I say this? It is a city, county, state level way of administration that is not in simple, plain language, versus being something that is this typical legalese aspect that out of the blue, they're given this information and they don't know what their participation part is and and to me, there should be a preliminary packet that should be added into this in plain language, like from Texas or 6th grade or something that is understandable to a child.
It sounds like you're describing a land use primer that would
of some sort. Yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
should be something instead of this complicated. I mean, the thing with us is we've been sitting in here for decades, not me, but most of you, and you understand all the gibberish and the garbage and the language type stuff that someone that's been living nicely in their neighborhood for 6 years or 10 years or something, all of a sudden gets this packet that's just like, it's got these diagrams that I don't know. I have no clue what any of this means.
Okay, so in the interest of moving ahead, I think you've made a really good point that
Very good point.
Oh, I haven't even, this is just 2 points.
I know, but we're running out of time here for this.
I get it. So the steps of processes needs to be spelled out better for the participants, for the neighbors. And then the last and most important part is the developer's meeting notes are not detailed enough. It doesn't really capture what their concerns are. And the worst part is when they're going to get back to it, to so-and-so and who and what and all this. The CPO never receives any of that. And that to me is a substandard of, if some developer decided that they weren't going to answer a single question and they were just going to get back to XYZ person and others, the CPO would never see a single one of those. And at least that's been in my experience. And that probably.
So what you're saying is when a developer responds to a question from the neighborhood meeting via mail or email, they need to copy the CPO as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the last final thing is the CPO needs to know the email, phone numbers of each of the individuals, because there's no way we can get back to them if they have some extreme concern or who else they should talk to, that we cannot contact them and suggest which department or how they should address that. And that to me, a lot of this is just checking off boxes of I did this, I got it done, I'm through, and I'm on my way. And it is not fulfilling the purpose and the function of what a CPO and these meetings, neighborhood meetings, are supposed to be about. And the last thing is 1,000 feet in country. My grandfather had land across the street from another farmer that was far in excess of 1,000 feet. So none of the other neighbors would ever know a single thing about anything. And that is, to me, is the most ridiculous part about the rural conversation of this thing, state or county or whatever. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. That was good. We got the Tualatin, Mary Lou.
Tree keepers.
Tree keepers, there we go.
Okay,
Washington County, okay.
thank goodness a few other people have already mentioned things on my list. So I'm gonna try to eliminate a few things. But as far as I've been able to ascertain, I believe that all of the meetings should be virtual. If you really want to be inclusive and get people that, you know, otherwise would have difficulty getting to a meeting at the location of where the the proposed development is going to take place. If there are a lot of people that just can't, they can't handle, you know, stairs or uneven surfaces or whatever. And it would sure be nice if they were just all virtual. I mean, I just think almost everybody can get hold of a computer nowadays or a phone and be able to attend these meetings that way. So that's my
Okay,
first.
I'm gonna move things along here. That's a good point. Do you have another one?
Yeah, and the second thing is I get the land use and transportation notification weekly on Fridays.
Yep.
About the upcoming meetings. And I would like to have those notifications have a clickable, be able to go online and click on a live link, like Virginia said.
I'm not sure what you mean.
Okay. Well, when you get the LUT thing emailed to you, at the bottom, you know, it has
the neighborhood meetings. I write those, so I'm with you.
Okay, I would like a live link to click.
There are multiple links in those neighborhood meeting notices. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
No. What if it usually says something about the developer and you can contact the developer.
Yeah, and then there is a link. There's a link to the location. There's a link to the
there's a link to the address. Yes, there is. But there's not a link. There's not a live link.
That's correct.
To the meeting.
You can. Okay.
I would like a live link to the meeting.
And I understand that. However, we cannot provide that because we've only provide the neighborhood meetings, and LUT News as a courtesy. We cannot promote the neighborhood meetings in any way because then we are doing the job of the developer, which then gives us, what's the word I'm looking for, Terry? We don't have a role in the actual production or promotion of the neighborhood meeting because we are not the developer. That is not, for us to get involved in that would be a conflict of interest.
But you are,
and that's for our county council.
But you always used to have it in there, and now
no, we did not for the last 10 years.
Yes, you did.
I've been here for 10 years. I'm sorry.
Mary Lou,
and I've been here for 25 or 30.
Mary Lou,
what?
get in touch with me. I have it. I'll have it.
There you
As
go.
long as it
What do you
isn't
mean
a
you'll have it?
37 thing that I have to copy out.
What I'm saying is it should be clickable on the form, and I don't think
Well,
that's
I
promoting
don't-
anything.
Well, we can
I
check with
don't
county
think,
council and certainly consider it.
Well, I have some old ones and I'd be glad to send them to you so you can see how they used to be clickable.
yeah, you sent, I'd like to see that too. Okay, I'm going to move along. Thank you. Ayla.
Unmute. Hello, Ayla.
Well, in the meantime, Gretchen,
Okay,
what do you
there we
have?
go. Is that,
There she
you have
is.
it? Okay, yeah, I for one really don't like this format of meeting people. I get it if you have a broken leg or you can't get to a meeting, but this technology we're coming to find is not completely human. And I think the synergy of humans in a room is important. I don't like having to meet all of you like this. And I know we have travel and this and that and the other to overcome, but you know what? I think it's worth it. And I would do everything to be there to be with everybody. All I can say is that I do land use applications to the county, and the top page of your application says everything about what's going on, the CPO, the addresses, the applicants, the owners, the proposed activity. And it used to be that when I brought something to the counter, the reason why CPO is the second line on there on that form is it's supposed to go out to us immediately and be mailed to us. I mean, a piece of paper to our address, because it takes 30 days for the land use department to even tell you if your application is complete, if it's missing documents, etc. The CPO has plenty of time to have their own meeting about this if you get that piece of paper on time the minute it hits the counter. And I would like to see that be back in practice. I don't want to email. I don't want a phone call or a text. I want hard copy that you received an application today regarding land use or transportation in my CPO.
Well,
And I guess that's all.
we're talking about the neighborhood meeting packet, not the application.
Well, what I understand, what is the neighborhood meeting that's different than CPO then? Because, you know, we don't have neighborhood meetings out here that I know of.
When we have a developer, when someone is considering a development application, they don't submit an application until they have conducted a neighborhood meeting. And that's dependent on what type of application we're talking about, type 1 or type 3, but
How do neighborhood, I don't understand the difference between a CPO and a neighborhood meeting.
a neighborhood meeting is a requirement for the developer, the development application. The developer does this.
Well, that's what it used to be to CPO. They had the same obligation to notify us immediately. There was no such thing as neighborhood meeting. The CPO was the neighborhood meeting. We were the people that cared and wanted to know.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
That's the way I lived it.
The rural CPOs may have had a little different part. We're coming up against what is true in the rural environment. So I think we need to have a separate presentation discussion about how our development applications handled in the rural area. And so, Ayla, I think that will go a ways towards answering your questions. And if we get that on a future meeting, you can ask further questions. In the interest of moving ahead, I'm going to see what, Gretchen, are you alive still? Ayla, I don't want to cut you off, but we captured your point. Do you have another one?
No, I just, I wanted to clarify that in the old days, you got hard copy and you got it the minute it hit the counter. And so even if they didn't have a pre-app, you didn't have to hear then, but you got it the minute the paper hit the counter. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Gretchen's going to get Eric.
Melissa, would you wave to me if you can hear me okay? Awesome. That was a great wave. First, I
Thank
want
you.
to thank you for something special you contribute when we have our volunteer efforts for the communications subcommittee and you join us. You bring an insight that's amazing. Thank you for that. With respect to your question, what I believe weaves together some of the other comments, but is my comment with respect to number 1 in the envelope, 2, 3, and of course 5 online, omitting 4. I would request you consider something of an executive summary. So a wiki, an executive summary that is on top and the cover for inclusive and welcoming integration into the program. So this crafted by a developer to discuss at a very high general level community impacts would tell people what they need to know. Now, understanding that this is kind of a touchy request, I want this to be a placeholder for long distance in the future. I have the honor and privilege to serve on something called BOPTA, which is now called PVAB, Board of Property Tax Appeals, name change to Property Value Adjustment Board. In partnership with assessment and taxation, I think that it is a good idea that the county begins collecting phone numbers, preferably cell phone numbers, and email addresses, along with all changes to deed. So when people go to buy and sell properties, now hear me out on this, so that we have an electronic database to message for notification. So the landowners, you would have a database in concurrent with a physical mailing to electronically notice the community, because I think that would, in the long term, help with making sure everybody's notified. And that is a mechanism that we can use in order to collect the information. Anyway, those are my comments. Any clarifications requested?
I don't think so. Correct me if I'm wrong, though, when you're talking about this collecting of the phone numbers and everything, that's bigger than neighborhood meetings. You're talking about deeds and everything else.
I am, but what I am talking about is the notification process. So currently we use a radius process, and we use the assessment and taxation database in order to pull the physical mailings of the radiuses, 500 or 1,000 feet. And so I see that long-term, we need to collect email and phone numbers anyway. It's going to be logical. We have a parallel issue, which is deed fraud. And I think the county is going to be forced into that process anyway. Why not make good of it? And bringing this all together, let's put the citizens in charge of the work that they should do, and that's monitor impacts to their neighborhood. And I think this is just the best way to accelerate the process. Electronic notification, I think, is really the long-term solution. The mail, I think, is a little bit clunky. It's very cumbersome for staff. And I think it's going to be a long-term process, maybe 50 years before we eventually get rid of it, if we eventually get rid of it. But I think that somebody needs to maybe make the uncomfortable suggestion that LEUT and A&T needs to talk about this, because you need each other, you need to cooperate. And I think that database, if we could have an executive summary go out by text message by neighbors as soon as the application hits, with an executive summary drafted by the applicant, this honors the work of the CPO program. It gets the message into the hands of the people in a very efficient fashion. And I think that's exactly how we should treat the public here, as the executives making decisions with a summary quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. Ken.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. I got just a quick one here for you. The few meetings that we've had in CPO 6, I noticed the developers don't really seem to know the initial procedure on how to do a neighborhood meeting. And what I'm talking about specifically is we get the phone calls from the developers or the emails requesting that they get time on our CPO meetings to have a neighborhood meeting. So I think if we could have some kind of simple flow chart, just a simple one that would explain just the initial procedures that these developers need to do, that would be a good thing to have. For example, you say, okay, you got to start off, you plan the neighborhood meeting, then you get in touch with the CPO, et cetera, et cetera. Some kind of a flow chart so they understand what the basic flow is. Unless you already have that, I'm not aware of it. So that's my comment.
There is a flow chart in the application package, but I think that it would be good to look at it with thoughts like that in mind.
Yeah, there's some confusion on the developers. At least I've noticed with the ones that we've had that they think that they think the CPO should schedule the neighborhood meeting, but we don't do that. So I just
Yeah,
want
it would be
yeah.
good to make it clear that the
Yeah.
CPO meetings are not intended for neighborhood meetings. However,
Right.
in large development applications, most CPOs will bring a developer in, like, say, the Red Tail Golf Course development. I mean, we have big things that happen in CPO 1, and so we invite the developer to come in and discuss them. That actually, now that I think of it, doesn't qualify as a neighborhood meeting. Okay, Virginia, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there were comments, Melissa, that you were expecting to hear from us that you haven't heard, or issues that that we haven't covered.
Actually, pretty much everything you've said. The one thing I didn't hear from you, Virginia, and you did mention it at one point, so I want to make sure we capture it, is that you want all materials sent from the developer sent single-sided.
Said what?
You want all developer materials sent mailed to you only printed on one side.
I still didn't quite catch the
Yes,
last bit of
please,
that
Melissa.
phrase.
Okay. That you wanted all materials printed one side only.
Oh, no, not necessarily. No,
you told me you were having trouble scanning it.
Well, all the packet stuff, all the standard packet stuff could be shrunk as far as I'm concerned. But yes, there are yes, thank you for reminding me, because if it's a map, for example, and it's got stuff printed on the other side, then it bleeds through when I scan it. So I would like, I think, you know, I'm not remembering right now who mentioned it, but there are some packets come through with a map showing the outline of the radius of who got notified. I think that would be really a good answer to, I believe it was Gretchen was saying, you never know whether your next door neighbor is receiving the information. And having that as a standard part of the packet would be great. And I can't remember who else mentioned it. Sometimes the area map is so large that it takes, like doing a jigsaw puzzle or something, finding that one little tiny marked lot that is the subject lot. And sometimes it's hatched, sometimes it's colored. You never know quite what you're looking for. So those are the types of things that could be standardized. But to include the radius map with every packet, and then the pro forma parts of the packet could definitely be ones printed two-sided or even shrunk, as far as I'm concerned, because I recycle so much paper.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I think we have plumbed the subject matter. That was a really good question to ask about what else is there, Virginia. So is there anything else, Melissa?
No, again, just to remind you, I mean, our trustee scribe, Chris Lewinberg, has all of your comments and suggestions recorded, and we will consider each of them. Again, no promises. We will, do what is I mean, there's, like I said, there's legal issues, there's equity issues, there's all kinds of things that need to be factored into this. And yeah, look, for example, you may notice we had, one person who wanted 100% in-person meetings, one person who wanted, all virtual meetings. Ideally, we could have, I mean, hybrid wasn't brought up, but that, and that's another thing that if could be considered, though it does involve a lot more equipment and setup and all that jazz. So who knows? But I'm just saying these are things that we'd consider. I'd like to check in with Terry and Anne. Anything you guys would like to ask or consider?
We got a lot of good feedback. It's quite a few points that even staff, Terry and I have talked about. So yeah, it was, nothing was really surprising. I think that's good. I think everybody kind of wants the same thing. So thank you, Melissa, for that presentation. It was great.
Oh, thank you. Terry,
Yeah,
what are your thoughts?
indeed. Thanks for listening to us.
To add, but I will work on my maps.
Okay. Okay, good to know. Gretchen's hand just went up.
I do have one more comment. I feel free to pick up the phone and call the planner who is going to hold the meeting if I'm not able to go. And I'm not sure that's clear in the notice that people could call the planner if they're unable to attend the meeting themselves. I
So
think
you
that
think
would
that
be
should be
helpful.
more prominent in the,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, that's good to know. I just want to clarify too, when you say you're calling the planner, you mean the applicant?
No, it's
Yeah.
usually the planner who's doing the engineering, who's doing the actual meeting. Yeah, it's
That
usually
would be
that.
the applicant.
Yeah,
Okay.
Their
Well,
representative.
it isn't
or the
always the
applicant's
landowner.
representative.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, great.
So
Great.
I'm curious, you've captured our questions. At what point do you think that list of questions would be able to be shared with us?
I am going to say, I'm gonna say mid to late July, and I'm
Okay.
gonna give you, I'm gonna explain, because that's much longer than I would like it to be. I am actually gonna be out for almost 3 weeks. I've got FMLA for my father, I've got bereavement leave for my mother-in-law who recently passed away, and then I'm gonna take 5 straight days of vacation. So there will be that. And then we are moving offices. When I get back, we are moving from the 2nd floor to the 3rd floor, and I don't know what that looks like. So when I say late July, I'm doing what the airlines do and tell you it's going to take 8 hours to fly someplace. So when it only takes 3, they look really good. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm telling you that late July, it'll probably be sooner than that, so that that you can manage your expectations.
Well, I think that I can speak for all of us when I say that whatever time it happens is we'll respond when it comes in. So
Okay.
we are not sitting on tenterhooks waiting.
Well, you never know. So,
Yeah.
and then I don't, and I, we'll capture everything in a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we will have decisions on those.
Right.
Okay, just to be clear, because we are going to do a similar focus type group at some point with developers to get their input and feedback as well.
Would
And
that
then,
be the developer forum?
well, that's a possibility, but I don't know that yet. We haven't talked about the development forum is in October. And I was hoping we might be able to do that sooner, but I don't know. I have to talk with folks and see what thoughts are. We wanted to start with the A team here and, kind of figure out what you guys wanted and all that stuff. So
The A team.
the
Okay.
A team,
The A
CCI,
team
the
is
A
going
team.
to thank you for your presentation and let you go on about your evening.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Sure. Bye. Thanks,
Okay.
Gretchen. Thanks, Dan.
Then stop sharing your screen. Boom.
Hmm, I
And
like
here
that.
we are. What a jolly bunch. Okay. It's Fran, the significant natural resource subcommittee, you seem to be the one who has produced the most comments. I kind of looked through it and am grateful for your work. You got anything to say about the review process going on now? Did she disappear? She did. She's not here. Okay, well, that makes that simple. So I'm pretty sure the uh,
You're breaking up,
uh,
Bruce.
um,
You may want to turn your video off. You're breaking up.
Okay, I'll do that. Okay, make effort. Jim, what do you got? Jim.
You're
I'm
on mute,
mute.
Jim.
That should be the word of the year.
As chair of the SNR committee, we did meet last week. We talked about all the wildlife we'd seen, over a dozen different critters. We will be coming out with a bird and critter and plant list sometime very soon. We did talk about the enforcement order goal 5 update. We reviewed all the slides by the technical advisory committee, and we're wondering about some deadlines. CPO4M does have Ariana Cipollini, the regional wildlife habitat person from Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, coming to our meeting next week. As far as some details on the codes that they're proposing, we want more 8-foot or larger buffer on upland habitat. We're concerned about tree planting. We're suggesting that 2 years is not enough to monitor them. We need to replace tree points. We want to protect all old oaks and other trees, the ash, the madrone, and the Pacific willow. Anyway, we have a bunch of trees we want to have them also consider. We talked about their hydrology. They CPO4M and Sue Bielke here. We appealed the habitat assessment guidelines, and what they seem to be doing is they seem to be not including the including the habitat assessment guidelines, not as a separate, but putting them in the codes. And they definitely look to be a little bit short of what they used to do. There are, some of the tree values they have are going to be different, but the overall codes are a little bit lacking on some things. So anyway, we have a list of some of our concerns, and we would like to get this on the agenda for an item on the agenda for next meeting or the meeting afterwards, because the whole committee needs to look at this issue, because it's going to be coming up as an ordinance, and we might have some motions to make at that point. So there's different things about tree cutting permits, and new CPOs not getting applications. There's a number of things that we discussed. And we're looking for a lot more details from the original habitat assessment guidelines, the current habitat assessment guidelines, and the proposed habitat assessment guidelines.
Well, we aren't going to have a steering committee meeting until next Monday, but I think that the SNR subject is something that should be on the July agenda.
We're not going to have a meeting tomorrow. When is it going to be? Monday?
I sent out the notice Monday at 11.
Okay. Oh, hopefully my calendar allows that. That's it.
Okay, thank you. The transportation subcommittee, I just sort of want to quickly sort of give us a direction that Southwest County is a huge problem that has not been solved for 35 years. And that's kind of why I wanted a transportation subcommittee. And Ken needs something to do too. So, okay, so that's, unless somebody has a really instructive thing to add about that, I want to move on to the communication subcommittee.
Communication subcommittee met Mary and I met over lunch and just talked about a whole bunch of things.
Anything
That's about
worth
all I
sharing?
have to say about that.
Anything for the good of the order? I guess not. Okay, very good. So I have a couple notes here that are to be discussed. Including the CPO4B mailing list with a CPO4M mailing list for the interim until CPO4B reactivates. Jim, does that seem like a practical way to go with just keeping people in 4B kind of in the loop?
Yes, Bruce, I'm strong on that. I think that would be valuable for those people to know what the issues are in Tigard. Tigard used to be a big CPO, and then it got split into the Metzger, the Bull Mountain, and the King City. And bringing them back together now might be helpful because they should be represented and they should keep informed of some of what's happening.
Okay,
Jim,
Gretchen.
could I just throw one comment? A lot of what's going on the south side of Bull Mountain is really relevant to 4K. So maybe that would be useful for you and I to talk about that since there is crossover.
Sure.
Thanks.
I don't think that combining the CPOs at this point is really on the table for discussion. It's only including the CPO4B people in CPO4M notifications.
I understand it's there. I'll talk to Jim about this.
Very good. Okay. And then there's nothing really going on with the climate change subcommittee. Is there, Paul? Okay. So we have I want to share that Diami Valentine got back to us, and he said he would follow up with a few of the items that we brought up. And he addressed the Cornelius Pass Road extension on the south, and the transportation service plan identifies Cornelius Pass as extending to Rosa Road. And that was the short of his response. There's a few things that we had asked in our larger set of questions regarding the neighborhood meeting, and Melissa provided me comments, and I will put those into the minutes of the meeting. So as you all diligently study the minutes, you can read them. I wanted to share that the CPO preparation document that Mary and I worked on was reviewed by Amanda and Ika, and then I had Mary and Virginia review it, and so it'll be going out to the whole group here in the next go around of communication.
That's
so with
for
that,
the agenda stuff. I don't know if that was clear. How it works between CPO leaders and staff to produce agendas.
Thank you. To make sure that
I'm here to make things right.
Yes, make them right. Okay, so let's go through the round table. We got CPO 1, or maybe we should start in reverse order.
Sure.
CPO 15, anybody here to speak to CPO 15?
I met. We only have 4 meetings a year, and our last one was last month, not this month. And we haven't gotten a new schedule as to when the next meetings will be. But for me, we've hit upon a few things in our discussions here about notices and about issues that are associated with rural areas. Most of the meetings that occur here in CPO 15, most of our members are literally within walking distance of where the meeting is held. Those that aren't aren't that far away. We've had hybrid meetings, and the hybrid meetings sort of worked, but the thing I have a problem with the hybrid meetings is usually there's only one camera. So you can't see the faces of other people that are involved in the meeting if they're not online. And there could be somebody responding to things in the meeting, and you don't see them, and so you're not aware of who it is that's talking. At least not unless the chair formally recognizes them.
Good point. Okay, CPO 13's gone. CPO 12C, 12F, 10, CPO 10, anybody? Okay, 9, 8, CPO 8.
Hi, everybody. Let's see. Since our last meeting was held just a few days before the UGB referendum in North Plains, for those of you who don't know the result of it, the referendum was passed by 72% to 28% no vote for more than doubling of the urban growth boundary. So it was soundly defeated. At the meeting, at the CPO meeting prior to the vote, Catherine Harrington came to that meeting, and it was unannounced. Within about 2 minutes of our starting, she announced that the meeting was, I think the term she used was invalid, because I think she assumed that the audio visual equipment belonged to us and it wasn't working. But it was actually the county's audio visual equipment. So then things were kind of quiet for a while. We had a presentation. And then at the end of that presentation, because we were so close to the election, the idea was for participants to be able to weigh in and talk about the kinds of services and things that they would like to see the city be able to offer without going to a very, very large expansion. And at that point, Catherine Harrington interrupted again and told us we couldn't talk about that. So I asked for somebody to make a motion to adjourn. Somebody did, somebody seconded it, we adjourned, and then we carried on. And that's where we are.
Sounds like the government.
I was disappointed in her response tonight, because at the meeting, she admonished us, CPO 8, for trying to engage with the city. We had invited the city over and over and over again to a forum to explain themselves, what they wanted to do, what the vision was, what the plan was, and then have equal time for the no people to say why the city was incorrect in their assessments, and to have we carried on with the forum anyway. We just didn't do it under the auspices of CPO 8. But she was very pointed in her admonition to us, and saying that our job as a CPO is to direct all communication with the county and not with the city.
This is an issue which confuses me, because CPO 1 has definitely engaged the city of Beaverton.
Well, I mean, if you look,
and Tigard recognizes the CPO. So there's a larger issue that I cannot fully identify or enunciate. So I think
we should go to the statute. And the statute under Goal 1 clearly says, under citizen involvement, and I'll read it to you. Goal 1 calls for, quote, the opportunity for citizens to be involved in all phases of the planning process. It requires each city and county to have a citizen involvement program that addresses, and then they have 6 points. So for her to come and say to us that we have no business talking with the city just flies in the face of Goal 1.
Well, yes, and perhaps no, in that if you're going to be and I'm just trying to tease this apart, that it would be the North Plains public participation process that would be the most appropriate to weigh in, not the county's public participation process. But that seems like it's getting kind of strict. And so
But it seems like it's splitting hairs as well.
it
I mean,
does. It does.
the city belongs in the county. The city is in the county. There are many cities within the county. They all have CPOs, but if they don't have any kind of citizen participation group that they've created on their own under the guise of goal one, then how are citizens meant to be interacting with the city on land use issues?
And that is the question, and one that we can't answer at this particular moment, but it is the question.
I would like to propose that those of us who would like to call a meeting with Catherine Harrington and County Council, frankly.
Well, it's not Harrington so much. I mean, it's not the chair as much as it is the public meeting laws. And so Fran Warren is gone, but she is on the LCDC whatever it is, Involvement Advisory Committee. And they are the ones who would want to answer this question first, since it applies to all public participation processes. I mean, Clackamas County has a similar situation, but somewhat different. So I think that we aren't going to table the discussion, but I think we've gone about as far as we can at this time.
What do you propose we do as a next step?
Well, I think that engaging Fran as she's representing us on the CIAC at the state level to say, hey, this is an issue that needs resolution at a state level.
Okay, I'm all for that. But I just don't want Catherine Harrington showing up at our meetings anymore and wagging a finger when we're in this impasse.
Well, I can appreciate that. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
Yes. Okay, Paul, what do you got?
I'm just thinking that there needs to be a process where you can establish a group that's not necessarily created by a city, but still satisfies the goal one. That's not under the auspices of any particular government entity. In this case, we're talking about either the city or the county. If you can do that, and it has well-identified boundaries associated with the group, it would operate pretty much the same way as any other citizen group. And if it was specific to the area that was being affected, I don't know if you could set it up temporarily or it has to be something that's permanent. It really comes down to what does the law say.
Okay, so very good. Thank you. Okay, so CPO 7.
We had Ride Connection at our last meeting, and Ride Connection is putting in a shuttle between Sunset Transit Station and PCC Rock Creek. And so at this point, they're designing the route, but they actually came and spoke about their other services that they provide. And it sounds like they can provide rides to people who do not have transportation and they don't have bus routes that serve them. So it sounds like a really great program. It's a nonprofit agency. And so if other CPOs have transportation issues like our CPO does, it might be worth your while to reach out to Ride Connection and have a presentation. Our CPO is also creating a traffic safety subcommittee to look at traffic issues within neighborhoods. It actually started by a neighborhood that's between 185th and Murray, between 158th and Murray, between Sunset Highway and Nike. And right now because Walker Road is such a mess. They're having just tremendous amounts of problems with cut through traffic, partly because of Nike. But one of the things I'm hoping they'll take on is there has been funding that's been given for an update to, and Dami touched on this, to the Transportation Safety Action Plan. And so we dug into the Transportation Safety Action Plan, which apparently was adopted back in, I think, 2017, and in the process of updating that. So you might, I would like to, this is probably something we should bring up at CCI steering to see if we can get some sort of representation on that committee that's doing the updating. So that's it in CPO 7.
Yes, ride connection is a thing. CPO 6.
Yeah, we're on summer hiatus for June and July. However, last month we did have Ann Kelly from Washington County talk about middle housing. So that was our last meeting we had. I'm working to try and get the sheriff to come and talk to us probably for our August meeting. So we're working on that. That's pretty much what's cooking in our CPO.
You know, if you can't get the sheriff, you might try Under Sheriff John Cook. He does a little bit more public engagement.
I see.
So
KOCH.
COCH, yeah.
Right. I think I've corresponded with him actually, now that you mention it. So
yeah, he's going to be the one to probably front end the process.
Gotcha.
CPO 5, 4, 3, CPO 3. Anybody from CPO 3 here? Yes, no.
Yeah.
Gretchen?
Yes.
4K. I skipped over 4.
Hi, 4K is finally up and running again. We've had some changes in our steering committee. For those of you who have been unaware of what's been going on, we had a petition to recall originally 6 counselors of the 7, and one of them then resigned, and another, I'm still not sure quite what happened, but they ended up recalling 4 of our counselors by between 20 and 40 votes. And it was very ugly and mean, unfortunately. But all of the land use cases that were appealed regarding our master plan have been completed and done. And so the transportation plan is final. The master plan is now final. We are going to have a presentation from the developer next Monday.
The developer of what?
Pardon?
The developer of what?
I was just going to say something before I got interrupted. The developer who is going to build our town center, which will have almost 1,300 housing units involving town center, which will have retail on the first floor and 4 stories of residential above, townhouses, apartments, cottages, and single family dwelling down toward. So the majority of the population growth and density will be all down close to Roy Rogers Road, which is why we've been fighting with TriMet to address the issue of transportation out in the newer areas, but has been to no avail so far. Anyway, we're looking forward to that presentation. It went before the Planning Commission at the end of April and was approved. Their plan. This is the big picture plan. It includes a site for a future city hall. There's going to be a new fire station, space for a rec center sometime in the future, swimming pool, all sorts of things. It's setting up placeholders for various and sundry accoutrements. They're starting construction on phase one later this summer. And it will be built in 4 stages over many years. But that's the big picture project that's going on in CPO 4K at the moment. We have annexed the area from 150th out to Roy Rogers. That application was or decision was appealed, and that has been the council's decision has been affirmed by Luba, and the master plan went to the Court of Appeals, which came down with a very interesting detailed opinion, which is going to have precedential value in a lot of future land use cases
Has that
that are
been
come down
decided?
the road. Pardon?
The master plan appeal has been decided?
Yes, it went to Luba and then was appealed to the Court of Appeals, and they wrote a 27-page opinion regarding variety of issues, but affirmed the city's decision.
Thank you.
So
Okay.
that's what's going on in 4K at the moment.
That's a lot. So CPO 4M.
First of all, I have a question for Gresham. You commented there at the end that this 27-page decision was going to be precedent setting. How is that? In what way will it be precedent setting?
It has to do with how petitioners someone who is opposed to what the city is doing, how they have to be very specific in delineating their concerns and following. Basically, you can't, if you don't raise it at the city council level, you can't raise it at the appellate level. I mean, that's one of the decisions which should have been black letter law up till now. But I'm not going to spend time going through the decision, but basically it's going to make much clearer as to what is expected of someone who opposes any kind of master planning, as to how they have to delineate their concern. And Jim, you wouldn't have a problem. You're very clear. We don't ever have to worry about you. But there are other people who have trouble being clear.
Thank you, Gretchen. As far as 4M, we will be having a meeting next week. As I said, we're going to have Ariana Cipollini, the Wildlife Habitat Regional Manager for Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. So that should be interesting. We'll be talking about, she's on the Technical Advisory Committee, so the Goal 5 updates. We'll talk about wildlife habitat. We'll talk about a whole variety of things. So if you want to jump in with us and hear what she has to say, you're welcome. We also have our wetlands restoration proposal that would provide a mitigation area for the city, the county, Metro, Oregon Department of Transportation, a number of things. And we want to bring in groups like the Wildlife Conservancy and some other, the river keepers in there to help us with that. We mostly were focusing on the significant natural resources. The initial proposals come down from the county, and we need to continue taking a look at it. And we also might be having retired Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife specialist Sue Bielke, who was part of the appeal that we had years ago. So that might also be happening. Anything you want to add, Jill?
No, I think you've done a good job of summarizing what's been going on.
Question.
Yes.
Is your meeting online or is it strictly in person?
We've been meeting online recently, due to the pandemic. And also it's just easier for me to bring up things on the screen from my desktop computer as compared to a laptop there that's also working the field there. But we do want to get back to doing in-person meetings. When we do, we do get more people attending. But we have also been having trouble with the notifications. There's a number of people who've been longtime members of the CPO, and they say they have not been getting any print agenda from the counties, and they haven't been getting an electronic one either. So there's some issues there. More questions, Paul?
Well, if you could send me a link for your meeting, I would appreciate it.
Okay, good.
I just want to observe.
Fine. I think it's a good thing. I invite you all to observe. We'll have a bunch of questions, and I haven't met her yet, but I know that CPO1 has had her come and speak, and she lives up in the CPO1 district. So I will try and get that sent out to everybody once the agenda is put together by the county.
Very good. Thank you. Now, Stan, CPO3.
Hmm?
Stan, you need to unmute.
Unmute Stan.
I got off screened on top of all that. So school closings are happening. Raleigh Hills Elementary appears to be in sights and building a new something in place of it. Portland Golf Club is still continuing their idea of dumping pond sediment next to the Fennel Creek Trail. And but still not everything is clear on that. And what I brought up earlier about the neighborhood developments and the information not being very clear, and then the notes that the developers send us is very brief and less than what actually was probably said. And so it's weird that this is how we receive the information as CPOs, is that it's coming from the developer and not from the neighborhood. And I think that was, I missed that point earlier of saying that there should be something in the information packet that it would be advisable that a neighbor or two take their own notes that should be submitted to the CPO. So we get a better picture of what is actually stated. And I do apologize for my earlier statements, other than I still agree with what I said, maybe not the way I said it. And then the Alpenrose Dairy, the developers at a impasse as far as their what they're trying to do is, it's incomplete as far as the county is concerned. So, but they still are planning. The plan is over 260 residences built in place of the dairy, which is a big loss for the garden home area. So,
well, it's a big loss for Oregon, actually.
Yeah, it's huge because I mean, on next door, I mean, you just see neighborhoods far and away or comment on this, and it's like, wow, it really had an impact
Yeah.
this squabbling and the family, how they destroyed something that was very prominent in our region, and
Yep.
which is a very sad statement. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Virginia, CPO 1.
Oh, I had to move my chair. Here I am. We talked about middle housing,
There we go. Middle housing.
and it's almost 9:30. Can we adjourn?
Do I hear a motion?
I move we adjourn.
I second.
Okay, class dismissed.
Yay!
Thank you, everybody.
Hold it. No, I got a request here. Bruce, could we see your notes or your minutes from you had said earlier you have been having some discussions with county council. Could you share those notes or minutes of what you've been discussing with us?
Jim, it looks like Bruce is done for the evening. Maybe you may want to email him. It's
Okay.
past my bedtime, I know, so I'm sure.
Okay, well, I'll be at the steering committee meeting also, but so I will ask him then if he can share something with us. I hope you're all interested in hearing what he's discussing with county council.
Yes.
I really don't know, but it could be very circumstantial for us. It could have a big effect. So